Hello and welcome to the Pixelated Realms Gamescast, your guide through the digital landscape, untangling the mysteries of your favorite titles and discussing the latest and greatest in video game fun. I'm your host, Alex Salerno, and alongside me is my brother, Tyler. What's up?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pixelated Realms. It's good to be here.
Yeah, another great episode. Today we're going to be talking about what we're playing, which is kind of our usual recap of the week and how things are going. We're going to answer questions that you can leave at pixelatedrealms.org/ask. We love when people ask questions. And then we're going to talk about our review of the First Descendant. So a lot to talk about today. We're going to try our best to keep it under 40 minutes. So hopefully we can keep that in there. We're also going to reveal our first ever attempt at a review scale, which we're very excited about. So let's dive right in. Tyler.
Yeah.
What's the week showing for you?
Well, honestly, it's a good week to be on the podcast because I have been just hopping around from video game to video game looking for my next obsession, as I do. So I've been just playing a lot of games this week. I've been playing some Fallout New Vegas, which I'm enjoying very much. I downloaded Jedi Survivor because I was on a little bit of a Star Wars kick due to the Acolyte, so I've been playing that, and honestly, I'm kind of sad I sat on it, like because
that's the first
one. No, it's the second one.
It's the second one. Oh, Fallen Order is the first one, right?
Fallen Order is the first one. Yeah, Jedi Survivor is the second one. What's really good and what got me. So you get like companions, and so even like the first mission, you get like basically like a Mandalorian guy with a jetpack, and you could send him out, kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxy game that came out, and like assist you. So it's really fun. But what drew me to it was there was a lot of like Star Wars lore bits that I really wanted to see. So I've been really enjoying that as well. But yeah, that's really not all. I've also been playing this really amazing game called Unicorn Overlord. I almost mixed that up. And I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard of this game. I'm gonna botch the developer, but let me just pull it up.
What kind of game is it?
So it's funny because it's actually kind of unique. It takes on kind of a HD pixel remaster of the old like Super Nintendo games, really kind of drawing on like Octopath Traveler or some of those like remastered. Sea of Stars is another example of a remastered pixel realized in 2024. It takes that kind of like Fire Emblem-esque approach to battle, so it's not turn-based. So you actually send your units along the field of battle, and they run into other units of the enemy. And then you bring together a 6v6 crew of units that fight each other in a what would you call it? Like a logical sequence where, like, you know, if this guy does this, that guy does this, and this guy does this. Is it like an auto
battler kind of a thing?
It's similar. It's almost like an auto battle, but you are setting up your team in a very, very specific manner. So your thieves might have a move that the first time they get struck, they evade. So you know that's going to happen. But then the guy behind them has a thing where the first time, you know, someone evades, they get to shoot the guy or something. So it's this interesting series of logic puzzles that you get to set up, and you try to make this squad that is, you know, invulnerable. And there's a lot of other mechanics to it. And it's actually a very complicated game. I'm probably like 20 or 30 hours in, and I feel like I'm just in the beginning. And sorry for not mentioning this sooner, but it is Vanillaware is the name of the developer, and it's and also Atlas help publish it. So really good game to check out if you're interested. If you really like those like complicated like team building games like Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem, really those like turn-based style games. But highly recommend it. Amazing art, amazing everything.
Very interesting. I've heard about it, and everybody who talks about it says like it's a game that you should play, and I just haven't.
I mean, it's kind of under the radar, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it is. It's like, I don't know why, because everybody keeps saying it's like a really good game, but their marketing, I guess, is very like word of mouth.
I mean, it has a very like Fire Emblem-esque style, but like having played the Fire Emblem games, it's totally unique in its approach to battles. And as someone who, basically my favorite thing about video games is the battle systems and leveling up your guys and choosing this guy over that guy, and the strategy aspects of building a team. This game is all about that. And I've been playing on the hardest difficulty, and I'm not to toot my own horn, but I'm a pretty experienced turn-based RPG player. I mean, it's still kicked my butt, so it's been a lot of fun.
I'm looking it up right now. It does look pretty cool. I must ask, though, why is it called Unicorn Overlord?
So it's part of the story, and it's funny because it's just kind of like over the top. It's like the land of the unicorn something is the ultimate Triforce thing. Like I don't even remember. It's pretty generic, to be honest. But but it just like the Fire Emblem games, it has like really unique like relationship mechanics. So when character A and character B are in the same squad and they battle together, those are the relationships that develop and give you bonuses to your team.
I admit, and maybe this is like one of the reasons why it's kind of gone over a lot of people, is like I expected with the name Unicorn in it to be kind of more of a goofy, lighthearted game, but looking at it, I can tell this is very serious.
It's true, and maybe that's the difference between like Japan and like America, and like unicorn to them doesn't have this kind of like whimsicalness to it that we do in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah,
but the truth is, it's like a
there's like a picture of a unicorn in like armor with a knight on it, which to me is just like hilarious. But I'm sure they're like, no, this is real serious, guys.
Think about Fire Emblem Three Houses, right? I mean, you have like unicorn-esque things, or
I guess that's true.
Yeah, like Pegasus, kind of guys. So, I mean, I'm discovering like the name myself, but regardless, the team building and the character like aspect and the uniqueness of this like combat system is got me hooked.
Yeah, so very cool. So yeah, if you like those kind of like Japanese kind of JRPG 2.5D kind of style, like this is definitely something that you should check out. I'm glad you mentioned Jedi Survivor now though, because I've been kind of like looking for a new game to pick up. Not that I have
on
games.
Game Pass.
I have my computer's still dead, and I don't have an Xbox, so I gotta wait for my computer to come back then. But then I'll definitely play it on Game Pass. So I'm probably gonna have to pick that up because I haven't picked. I played the first one, love the first one, amazing game.
Oh, the ending, ooh,
it's so good. I mean, everything about that game is so good. Like I love it. Like I almost bought it again. I played it on I think Game Pass or something. I don't remember where I played it, but you know what? Dustin got me a code, and then. I almost bought it again on PlayStation just to get the trophies for it because I liked it so much. So I would probably actually buy it, even though it's on Game Pass on the PlayStation, which is
if you're frustrated playing Elden Ring, Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order are great. They're like it's like Dark Souls but slightly less hard and
easier,
still challenging.
Yeah. Well, that's also what I've been playing is Elden Ring. And
Tell me about that.
I honestly, every time I play it, I kind of like come back and I'm like, is this the greatest game ever made?
But like, what specifically about it makes you think it is the greatest game ever made?
Man, we should do a whole video on that.
I know, but
I don't think I have
condense
time.
it for now. Condense into like what about it has offered something so incredibly new and novel that you've never seen before?
Well, one, it's maybe not Elden Ring specifically, but FromSoft created this genre.
Yeah. Yes, they did.
Hardcore action RPG. And so the novelty of that is there, right?
Okay.
But on top of that, it's hard to explain because a lot of it is like little nuanced things, but it just how much the vision of the game is very clear and is executed perfectly, which I feel like a lot of games you can play and you can see, I see what they were trying to go for and it didn't quite hit. And it's like with all the FromSoft games, it's like you could say, I can see what they were going for and they fucking nailed it, right? Like, and then also, and I understand like those type of games are for everybody. So when I say it's like the greatest game ever made, it's like for me, right? It's so good. I mean, they do such a good job of making you feel like you achieve something, but it's a single player game. So you like it's as opposed to like multiplayer games, you're like, I achieved something and I can show it off. It's like this is something that's like intrinsic to you that you're like, I did this and I feel good about myself. Like I'm proud of myself. Like you feel proud about doing it. But on top of that, just like the level design is probably some of the greatest level design in video games. Like I can't even I don't have enough time to explain how good the level design is in those games. The enemy design, next level. The balancing and weapon design is absolutely masterful. The enemies and the combat, perfect. Like I could do probably a 3-hour video on just how good these games are. And this is an accumulation of, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and like all those things. And like Elden Ring just took all of it and put all the best parts into one game. And the open world of Elden Ring really works for it. And, some people would say that there's some things in it that made it like a little easier than like Dark Souls and stuff like that. So like the like the summons and some things like that, and like the fact that it's open world, it doesn't force you down like a path that you have to just beat your head against. Like you can come back to it. But I think those are the best parts of the game, and I think that it being hard doesn't have to mean isn't like you have to bang your head against the wall all the time. It being hard can mean like, hey, I'm not ready for this. I need to come back. And it's totally okay to like ask for help in that game, right? Which is like summoning and stuff like that, which I think adds to the accessibility of that game. Because, a lot of people complain about like the accessibility of it being too difficult. And I personally think that difficulty and accessibility are separate. I don't think they're the same thing. I think you can have a very hard game, but that's still very accessible.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think they're working towards that goal more and more. Like the original Dark Souls weren't very accessible. Well, Elden Ring is much more accessible in that fact. Like, hey, you can always use the summons. You can grind out your character more. You could do that in the other games too, or you could go somewhere and come back. Like, there's all sorts of routes that you can take and not feel like you're locked in. But I mean, that game is so good. But anyways, I am playing the expansion. And it's just more of like amazing game, and it's just so good, and it's just so it's just
better
more
than Blood and Wine, as they were saying.
Yeah, that's a tough one because that was my current most favorite game. Was
honestly,
Witcher,
that's a game
Blood
I want to
and
go
Wine.
back and replay. Maybe I'll do it for the stream if I'll do it live on Twitch if our viewers, are interested.
Yeah,
because The Witcher 3, when I beat that game, that was my favorite game of all time.
Me too.
Until I played and beat Cyberpunk 2077, and then that was my favorite game of all time. So it's a good time to be alive, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, The Witcher 3 is still up there for me, and I think this is tied with Elden Ring, is The Witcher 3. And Witcher 3, actually, about a year ago, maybe a little more, came out with a PS5 update, and I told myself I would replay it. And I didn't, so maybe that would be a fun time for us to go through that game again, because that is my favorite game of all time, and
it's so it's like the most immersive besides Cyberpunk, which I know they're the same studio, but it's just like it's the most immersive game I've ever played. Like I didn't mind dialogue in Witcher 3 ever. I was like, no, because I'm talking to this villager, but that villager's I'm helping them because their crops are disappearing, and they think it's like wolves. Well, I found a wolf, but it wasn't the wolf. It was actually a fucking bear in a cave that is actually a werebear. It was like everything in that game was so awesome. And then by the end, I'm like crying about the story. Like, it was just amazing.
Yeah.
And then, although Cyberpunk had a really rough a start, like it ended up having all of that same amazingness that I'm just in love with CD Projekt Red, if you can't tell.
No, they're so good, and they put the effort and time into everything, and they I can't wait to see what they do next.
Seriously,
but that's it for me on Elden Ring. We're gonna move on, and then obviously we've been playing the First Descendant.
Yes.
But we're going to talk about that more after our question section. So let's jump into our questions. So we have one question from Ralph, and he says there's still no ask button on your main page. I know. It's because we use like an automatically generated website from our podcast service thing that, and I don't have a lot of control over it. So we'll probably make like an actual legit website at some point, but I just don't have the time. I don't have the time. And we'll do that. But let's go ahead and ask the question just like you can on pixelatedrealms.org/ask. We highly recommend everybody go and ask us some questions. So he says the CEO of Entertainment Software Association recently discussed the benefits of video games and gaming in general. How do you personally experience the benefits from video games? Ralph's answer: the friends you make by playing games can turn into friendships in real life. That's a great question. Like, I think gaming does have a shit ton of benefits, and that's a great answer because that's how Ralph and I met. We were playing games on Twitch together. Well, yeah, we were playing games on Twitch together, and now we're like real life friends. So that is definitely a benefit. But Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. I think there's innumerable answers to that. First and foremost, I mean, we all started video gaming as I mean, I'm assuming most of us as children. It's a great way to connect with people. I wouldn't have any of the friends I have today, minus a few, if I didn't have video games as a tool for us to connect. Number two, it's incredibly stimulating to the brain. Like for me, like the problem solving aspect of it is huge. I think there's an argument to be made that like some of our feral nature can be kind of relieved when we play video games because we're in this world of luxury now. And I completely agree with you, Ralph, that, to me, like friends online are just like my friends in real life. I see very little difference, and it's so exciting to meet new people and meet other people who have like-minded thoughts and feelings and have mutual respect for each other. I think that's really, really great.
Totally. And I think there's a lot of like mental health benefits in video gaming. I'm sure a lot of us use it to like escape and kind of like relax. That's what I use video games a lot for, is because like my day is usually so chaotic. And especially as someone who's, like ADD, autistic, that like it's like can limit all of the sensory overload we have in the world down, and you're just kind of focusing on just like a really cool story. And it's just, aside from that, it's just a really active way to participate in very interesting narratives and very cool stories. And like as someone who like really likes immersive stories, movies are great. I used to be a huge movie buff, and now, and not that I'm not still, but it's like video games has just so overtaken that for me, because it's like a movie is such a passive experience. And then movies is like, I am the character. I am Master Chief. I am this. Like, I can experience like all these things, and so that's just like, such a unique way to digest, a story.
I wanted to interject that same exact point too. And for me, I have at least I sometimes have a hard time reading because of some eye issues I have, and also because of ADHD. But video games are a way I can experience narratives and stories, which is one of my favorite things ever. It really, in such a unique and immersive way, and just that little bit of like moving my character or like interacting with the world in that little tiny way allows me to immerse myself and keep my focus. And you know what? Like, that's really cool. Like, I'm a big advocate for people learning how to like work with themselves instead of just trying to like push yourself to be what society wants you to be. So if experiencing stories through video games is something that works for you, then you should do it, because stories are kind of like what makes life worth living. Like, it's awesome. It's the best part.
Yeah. You should watch Dead Poets Society. That's what the whole movie's
Captain,
about.
my captain.
Yeah. All right. So thanks, Ralph, for the question. Appreciate it, as always.
All your questions.
Yeah. Greg, you got to start asking questions. I know you're listening.
For all of our 500 plus subscribers, I want to hear some questions, guys.
Yeah, so we can figure out how many of you are bots. So let's move on. We want to talk about the First Descendant.
Prompt. You're giving us a comment on on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, comment on our YouTube channel.
Prompt.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. So we're going to unveil for the first time our review scale. Now, note that this is likely to change, and we're experimenting with a couple of different styles. Originally, I had made this like really complicated matrix that had like a two-part scale, and that was like a number and a letter and all these things. And we're like, maybe that's too complicated. And then we came up with all these other ideas. We kind of narrowed it down to a simpler idea. So we want to do a label-based scale, which means that we're not using numbers. So the number, we feel like everybody has a different interpretation of what the numbers mean. So instead, we're going to use a kind of you could almost say like a 7-point scale, but it's going to go from the best being a masterpiece down to excellent, great, good, okay, bad, and awful. So we're going to use those labels to decide of how we feel like a game's quality is, and it's like intention and vision. But then we can also add modifiers and what we're calling awards. So a modifier would be like too early to tell, or get on sale, kind of like a great buy on sale, or something like that. So it could be like, this is a good game, but something you should, or like an excellent game, but something that you should wait for a sale, right? That could be an idea of a modifier, or like pay to win, like stuff like that. So like additional information that we feel is relevant to a review score. And then we have awards, which are, we think that it has done something, maybe the scale, maybe it's like a great game. Maybe we gave it the great moniker, but it has an amazing soundtrack, like a 10 out of 10 soundtrack. And we want to somehow show you that even though the game is like maybe not a 10 out of 10, like there are parts of it that are amazing. Yeah. And so we can denote that in this way. So it gives you kind of more information. So we're going to try and we're going to test this out, and we're going to eventually probably post it online officially, but we're going to try and kind of figure this out as we go. So our first game that we're using our scale on is going to be The First Descendant, which came out relatively recently, about 2 weeks ago on the July 2nd. Yep. It is by Nexon Games, who's the same people who made like Story.
Story.
Their reputation is, very
not
microtransaction-y. And so let's talk about the game a little bit. Tyler, you want to start us off?
All right, so as we mentioned in one of our past videos, it's a free-to-play, third-person multiplayer looter shooter. That's a mouthful. Think games similar to Destiny, where you're in a team, you're dropped into an overworld, you're doing missions, you're collecting items, you're collecting weapons, modifiers.
Warframe, kind of.
Very similar to Warframe. Was the max party size is 4, so if you and 3 of your closest friends want to hop on and start running through dungeons together, you have a selection of what are called Descendants. Descendants are your heroes or champions or whatever you want to call it. And they are purchasable. However, you can also grind the materials you need to make these new characters to play through playing the game, which kind of gets us into one of our first aspects of the game is kind of Nexon's infamous pay to win models, and we'll dive into it a little bit more later. But I'll start by saying my first impressions of the game are interesting. For one, I had some real bad technical issues getting the game started. It took me about a week before I could even play the game without like incredible FPS drops and stuttering. It ended up being a mouse problem, so if anyone out there is having similar issues, quit out of your mouse application and you might fix it. But once I got into the game, I mean, there's definitely things that stand out to me. I think visually it's quite beautiful. I mean, I think the characters do look very nice. I thought the overworld and the main town hub look nice. I think there's room for growth. I'm not saying it's like the most amazing visuals I've ever seen, but I think it's certainly something to grow on. And the gameplay has been fairly fun. I don't mind the gameplay loop. It's very transparent when you go to do a mission, what possible things may drop. The missions are fairly quick, so it doesn't feel like it's dragging on too bad. There's a variety types of missions, so there's kind of more raid style people fighting a big monster, or running through a dungeon in line with classic RPGs. So far, I think it's not a bad foundation. I think they've started with something that could possibly be successful. I'm a little sad to see some of the pay to win and microtransaction tactics, but they don't surprise me because of Nexon's reputation. But what were your general thoughts?
Yeah, so I've played probably like 25 to 30 hours of this game already because I've just been kind of like at night. I have my PlayStation, next to my bed, and so like at night I'll play a couple hours like every night to kind of decompress. And um, so yeah, you nailed kind of like what the game is, right? So you play as these descendants, and you can switch between the characters, um, and so having played so much about it now is like the reason I've played I think this much is because the game loop is very like addicting. It's got a very it kind of gives you that dopamine hit because it's very straightforward, right? It's like go do this thing, get this mission, get better gear, rinse and repeat. Kind of do things. So it's like a very simple game. The idea of the game is very simple. There's not much variety in it. It's very much like go shoot these things, get better gear or get consumables, and then build better gear and kind of keep doing it like that. And so it's I would consider a very casual game in that aspect, almost mobile gamey in a way, where it's kind of where like they're just giving you like the next that little bit of like a the carrot of like here's the next thing you can do, here's the next thing you can do. And so there's that. The microtransactions in the game are pretty bad, I'll say.
Should we describe them in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, so having now played like quite a bit of the game, surprisingly more than I thought I was going to be honest. I was like, okay, maybe I should pay a little bit. It's a free to play game, so I was like, I don't feel I feel okay paying for stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, maybe I'll spend like 20, 30, maybe even $40. And I go in and I was like, maybe I'll buy a character. The characters, to buy a character is like $60, $70 for one character. And I was like, no, that's way too much. And they have what's called the ultimate version of certain characters, which is like a souped up version, kind of almost pay to win like that.
It's stat increases?
I don't actually know.
I thought it was just a visual upgrade, but I could be wrong.
It might just be a visual upgrade. But I was like, hey, the character that I like has an ultimate version. Maybe I'll go check it out. It's $100 to get that character. And I was like, hell no. Like, this is so predatory.
The game's not that good yet.
No. They very clearly made every single piece of this game to cater to whales. And a whale is somebody who spends a lot of money in a game with microtransactions. Yeah. And, it's kind of like disgusting, to be honest. Like they made these like addictive loops, and then they put a shit ton of really high value items or very expensive items in their store that they want people to just like spend like $10,000 in. So that kind of made me sad to see. I was sad to see, but I mean,
you're right when you said it's that phone game loop, right? Where in phone games, what you do is, and anyone who's played phone games knows this, like Candy Crush or whatever, you let them achieve things really quickly, and you're like, great, I'm playing the game, I'm progressing. And then eventually it's like, well, this took 30 minutes. Now it takes 2 hours. Now it takes 2 days. And it quickly escalates to being this thing. And then you're like, well, if I just pay like $5, it won't take 2 days. It'll take, 5 minutes. Okay. And that's kind of what this game does, where it's like, oh, researching your this weapon that you got schematics for is going to take 4 hours. Or you could pay $5 and it could take 1 minute.
Yeah,
and
I'm
that's
starting
fine
to get there.
in the beginning, but once you get to the end of that chain and you're like, you start the game and you're like, okay, I'm researching this weapon. Okay, I'll see you guys in 13 days. And it becomes ridiculous, right?
Yeah,
and it stops being fun.
Yeah, and so like I kind of was like, okay, I kind of want to finish the story out. That's something I want to mention too. The story is awful. The story is really bad. It's very vanilla. It's like they literally took like a Mad Libs of video game stories and just started filling out the words. It's so plain and vanilla, and there's just nothing that happens. And the dialogue is not very good either.
Particularly that one descendant who like hates everyone for not being having the Guardian come to him. That guy cracks me up. He's like yelling at my character, and I'm like,
it's so bad.
Dude, can I punch this dude in the face?
I don't want to do spoilers, but there's for sure things later about that character. But it's just, the dialogue is bad. The story is so boring and
Generic, yeah.
generic. And it's like a little bit of like Evangelion, but if it was like really shitty. It's like there's like a dimensional wall break, and there's enemies flooded in. There's like the vulgar, and then on top of that, there are these colossi giant enemies that'll come through that you have to fight that are like kind of like a mini raid thing. And you're trying to like seal up this dimensional wall, but there's so many unanswered questions. Like you're trying to find these things called iron hearts, and there's 3 of them, and you're like, okay, like they just expect you to just like, hey, we're trying to find the iron heart. It has the power to close these, and you're just kind of like, that's it. That's all you're gonna tell me. There's this mystical item that I have to get. Like there's no reason. There's no nothing. It's just, anyways. The story is pretty bad. The music is very generic. The soundtracks and stuff like that are very generic.
Yeah.
The mechanics are very cookie cutter and stolen. Like I saw this thing that, like the icons are literally ripoffs of Destiny icons.
It was very close.
And it was like 90% of the icon is the same as these things. So they clearly are just kind of like slapping some things together. I haven't had any major performance issues, but I've heard that people have had performance issues and stuff like that. And so it's like the game is certainly addictive and designed that way. And like I was saying before, is like I was trying to kind of go through the story, and I was like, hey, I've invested this much, like maybe I should just close out the story. And I've kind of hit a point, like you said, where it's like things are starting to get annoyingly long and
slows
difficult,
down too
and
much.
the grind is becoming like too much. And I'm just like, oh no, are they really gonna essentially paywall me in this game to like if it was like a $20 investment or something, like whatever, like
that's
okay,
one thing.
it's a free to play game.
Overvaluing,
but they're for sure overvaluing the game, and so it's just like, man, if they had cut their prices in half, it would have been like less of an issue. But the fact that things are so expensive is just ridiculous. It's like, and they try and make it look like it's not. Like it's like 3,000 whatever coins to unlock a character, and so you think maybe that's $30. No, that's like $70 to get that. And so they're like trying to make it look like it's only 3,000 coins, and you're like, yeah, right, okay, that's like a lot of money.
Another thing I wanted to mention is, okay, so you're given a grappling hook in this game, right? So your characters, similar to Warframe, are expected to have like high mobility, right? There's an expectation that you're going to be like kind of on it. There's jump puzzles even, which like I don't hate inherently, but like I don't know. I'm like running around some of these levels, and I don't know what I'm allowed to grapple onto, what I'm not allowed to grapple onto. Sometimes my character jumps, it'll give me the thing, I'll hit grapple, it won't do it, I'll fall.
I'll tell you why. There's a cooldown on the grappling hook that it's easy to miss, because you have 2 grappling hook charges, so you can do 2 in a row, and then you have to charge, and the charge
even if you fail, it still doesn't reload it.
So it'll and it's like a 10-second recharge, so you don't notice it at first, and you'll go to shoot it, and the icon's so little you don't even know, and but so you'll shoot it, and then nothing will happen, and you fall, and you're like, oh shit,
But still, like I'll go to like grapple onto. It'll be like, okay, the map says this is right in front of me, and I don't see any other path, so I'll go to grapple onto a roof, and it'll be like, no, you can't grapple onto that roof, and I'm like, well, then why give me a grappling hook?
Yeah. So that's kind of our thoughts on it. So what, on the new modified review scale, what would you give this game?
Okay, well, to be honest, I feel like there is some fun factor there. I feel like that fun factor is going to die down. Part of me wanted to go good. To tell you the truth, I think I'm just going to have to go with okay today, with the possibility of being good later.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out. I'm a little torn myself. I am also in between good and okay, and so good is like dead center in our scale. It's like, it's the middle, it's middling, and I want to say good because of how much time I've kind of put into it, and I felt like I got value from it in that time. But at the same time, it was almost just because I was like had nothing better to do, right? So I think I'm also going to sadly give this an okay, and which is kind of makes me kind of feel bad for putting so many hours into this.
I know, it's like I put so much time into this game, and I'm like, wow, we just said all negative things. Like I was like,
it's because
that's why
I'm giving it addiction.
I'm giving it a little credit on the fun factor. Like I think there's some, like for example, okay, so the character Bunny, it's the first character you're given. Like I love the skill mechanics of that character. Just to say something positive, so she basically like you hit like she's the Flash, so or Tracer. So you hit this move and you start running really really fast, which charges up her ability. And then the more of that, the faster you're going, you hit another ability, and then the faster you're running, the more that ability does damage to people around you, the faster that happens. So like the characters feel super fun because you're just running around killing guys, and your whole point is to keep up as much speed as possible. So like I got to give them some credit on some of these characters, and I haven't played all the Descendants yet because they're locked behind grinding or paywall. Some of these characters have the potential to be really fun, and some of these raids in the future have potential to be really fun. They're called intercepts, right? Or void intercepts.
Those are the giant boss battles, and then they have operations, which are kind of like a dungeon.
So the big boss battles have potential to be fun, and I played the second one, which I think it was called the something woman, the
stunning woman, I think.
Stunning woman, and it wasn't a walk in the park. We actually failed 2 times before we cleared it. So like I'm like, if there's gonna be some difficulty, like that's the second one. I thought like the first one was a walk in the park. I thought the second one would be a little bit easier, but no, or sorry, would be just as easy, but it wasn't. So I mean, with all the bad, I still think there's some good. I think they're planning on supporting this for a long time because they just want to make as much money as possible.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
I'm going to give it the modifier of slimy microtransactions.
Fair.
If it didn't have that modifier, I probably would have given it a good, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because the loop is satisfying, and it is pre-season. They do battle passes. We didn't mention that before, but they have battle passes. And so it's like, okay, I expect them to add more in the future and probably add new characters and probably new content. And so I can see this game becoming something that people really like, which then I would have given it a good. It's the slimy microtransactions that just pull all that down for me. And like you said, there is some fun to be found. The operations are kind of cool. The characters are kind of cool. The gunplay and the skills don't seem to be in some of the characters don't seem to mesh very well. Cause like you were saying with like Bunny.
Yeah. You almost don't want to use guns.
You almost don't want to use the guns at all.
Yeah.
And so it kind of has this odd balance, but the characters can be kind of neat. I think we've
I think that's fair enough for our first run through on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone, let us know in the comments if you want a dedicated video for this game. We can surely spend more time on this and actually, deep dive. So let us know if that's something you'd be interested in. And you got anything last to say before we close her up?
No, I think just to reemphasize, I think I want to get streaming on our Twitch channel a little bit more. So personally, I'd love to do some more like narrative story based streams. So if you guys want to see that, please be on the lookout for live Twitch streams. We'll try to do them on YouTube too if we're allowed to. So I appreciate that. Everyone viewing our podcast here, and hope to see you next time.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to be notified when we post new episodes. We post new episodes every Tuesday morning on podcast services and YouTube. You can also find us on Instagram, Threads, YouTube, and Twitch at Pixelated Realms Podcast. Thank you all so much.